My parents were born in Ellsworth, Kansas, and they lived on a farm that we just used to love because it was just a fabulous place. Marshall?
Well, okay, my dad grew up in a small community in Calhoun, Missouri, and he left there and he went to join the U.S. Navy prior to World War I, matter of fact. And my mom was born and raised in Salina, Kansas. But what always tickled me was that Dad started dating her. He was a naval recruit after his end of his naval service, and they were starting to pull these guys into military service. And he was very nasty. Anybody that dated Mom, he made sure that they got sent away. One of the first guys. I had a wonderful life. You know, as a lonely child, you don't have any competition with anybody, and you do as you damn well please, and as much as your mother would allow you to do. So I had a wonderful life. Now Mona
I
was
had two younger
handicapped. She had-
brothers. They were ornery as
Yeah.
heck. And they
Jeez.
would love to play tricks on me, like locking me in my bedroom. And I couldn't get out to go to school one day. My mother finally came and rescued me and said, let her out of that room because she needs to get to school.
At our age, we weren't that involved in the Depression, except we were kind of aware about, as Mona indicates, outside things. The thing I think most about that point in time is the weather. And in Kansas particularly, in the summertime, it would be huge dust storms. And all over that entire area, well, probably going to Texas to Oklahoma, western Kansas at least. And I remember my grandmother was a wonderful crocheter, and she made these beautiful crocheted tablecloths, you know, a lot of pattern and stuff like that. And you get up in the morning and after a dust storm and pick it up, you'd still see all the
Pattern would be laying
same
out
pattern
on
and
the
everything.
table.
Wow.
Our house became famous because my mother would make sandwiches and put meat, real meat in them. The people were so starving that this was a great gift.
One of the fun things about that era is that her dad, who was a real character, was
I
sales
loved my
manager
dad.
for the Pan Dandy Bakery in Salina. I was terribly impressed, though I didn't know Mona at the time. He also was the one that was the guy that boarded the kids on the Pan Dandy train. They had about 3 cars, and it looked like a train, actually. They'd go around, and every kid in Salina, Kansas thought that got to be the greatest
I
thing in
wanted
the
to
world.
ride the Pandandy
And-
train. I was the princess of
Yeah.
the Pandandy train,
Oh.
and it was great fun.
How did you guys first meet?
In high school,
Well, let's put it this way. I was a senior, upperclassman. She was a junior. And then in the spring every year in Salina, Kansas, they had what they called a Sadie Hawkins dance. And so one day in the halls of the Washington High School, your mother, who I did not know, came up and asked if I would be her date to the Sadie Hawkins dance.
Really?
Smart girls always choose the guys.
I thought he was great, a great catch. It's proved to be true.
Well, partly true.
Yeah,
I had the
that's
wonderful
true.
chance as graduation from high school to take care of my college education by joining the Navy in a special program. Myself and I think it was about another 10 or 11 guys from my high school all went into the same naval program. Then after I came back, after 18, I think it was 20 months maybe, by that time Mona had already told me that about this wonderful fellow Dale Engel, and kind of told me she had some other stuff going. And anyway, she wanted to get together after we got back, but she couldn't
course
do it
I
all
did.
the time because she had to go to KU for dances, and I knew the only way to counter that is I just started dating some of the local girls.
Oh ho ho.
She didn't like it.
I didn't like it at all because with me he had been gone a long time, and so it was natural that I would start dating. And he deliberately started dating girls that I didn't like.
When did you ask Grammy to marry you, and how did you propose? And when did you know that you wanted to get married?
Well, we were sitting up on my arm around her, and we're sitting up on a beautiful hill and looking out over the city and stuff like that. And gosh, we had a wonderful relationship, and she said, well, Marshall, when are we going to get married? I said, what? It never crossed my mind.
And so I had to ask him. The girls are always thinking about getting married. We were the first ones in our group married.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Yeah. 19.
I think I was 20, just barely 20.
We knew that we were destined to be together
Oh my gosh.
from day one.
Oh,
I knew that he was the guy for me, and I guess I assumed that you knew equally.
Well, I'm sure I did, down there deep somewhere.
He was still playing the field.
Well, I think we both enjoyed each child as they came along. We had 4 girls and finally a boy.
And Linda came along shortly after we were married.
More than 9 months, I would.
Well, Linda was our first child, and we didn't know what we were doing at that point, and so I just would give her everything she wanted. I just loved her dearly. She was the first. I just didn't ever say no to her.
She was really very nice, and we got along beautifully.
Lou was the second born, and I just got along famously with Lou. She was looking up to me as a mom, and I was looking at her as the super daughter.
I can recall one time that Lou got mad at Linda and threw her horse and broke it off, all the stuff like that.
Threw it across the room.
And then Linda came over and Lou picked it up and hit her with it and cut her. They took about 40 years to get over that.
Now they've made up and they're good friends again.
Yes.
So then Leslie, tell us about Leslie.
Well, she
The
was
miracle child.
the sadness of our life.
Mm-hmm.
That was a journey that no parent should ever have to go on.
Many remarkable things happened. Mona tells a story about taking her, bathing her, where she was quite wounded, but no complaints. And she just casually said, oh, I'm going to go and live in God's house.
And that was terrible.
And Mona said, well,
Am I going to
Leslie,
go with you?
am I going to go with you? Because obviously they did.
And she said, not now, but later.
Not now, but later.
So I've always held on to that I get to see her again.
And so what was Lala like growing up?
Well, she was a lovely child, and I just loved her from the day I saw her.
Well, she always attracted guys. But I recall one guy particularly was really infatuated. He'd come over to the house, and Laura was going to go on some kind of trip or something. And he said, well, Mr. Faith, he said, you know, when the fox is away, the birds will play. He was very concerned about it.
I had hoped for a boy for a long time. And finally, I thought Marshall should have a son because I had these darling daughters. And so he needed to have a son to balance the act. David was that son. He was cute and he was kind and he was very sweet. He was boisterous and into a lot of boy things, which after several girls was a shock. I thought he was just about the perfect little boy.
I had a dream one night, and it was so strong that I told Mona totally about it in the morning. I said, I had a strange dream. I was sitting in a room with my 2 bosses. And they said, Marshal, we want you to go and take your family and head up our operation in Omaha, Nebraska. And I told Mona about it. I said, what's really hysterical, Pillsbury has no operation in Omaha, Nebraska. And then about 6 months later, suddenly across the teletype comes the announcement that Pillsbury had just bought Nebraska Iowa Grain Company in Omaha, Nebraska. And I told Mona, I said, do you suppose there was anything to that funny dream? And then...
And there was.
Well, not really. And right at that point in time, it was shortly thereafter announced that one of my contemporaries that had been in Chicago was coming over to manage that, a fellow by the name of Red Rose. And so I told Mona, I said, well, shot that down. And then about 2 months after that, I got a call from our secretary, one of the secretaries in Minneapolis, that the bosses were on a trip and were flying down the company plane, and would I meet them at the airport? And I said, oh, certainly, sure I would. And so meet them at the airport, and let's go in and have a cup of coffee, and went and sat down. same room in the dream, and the same guys.
Oh my gosh.
I've
That
always
weird?
known that I was supposed to be, for whatever reason, in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha.
Well, the main thing I learned in life, and you're going to think this is really weird, come knocking on our door were a couple of Mormon missionaries. And one of the things I got into was the book of Malachi, 3rd chapter, which was basically the Lord's promise that if you bring your tithes into my house, so there's food for all, my promise is to you, I'll rain down upon you more heavenly treasures than your hands or storehouses can hold.
And that's when we started to tithe.
About a week after we started the tithing, the company announced, because of results, a bonus that was totally unexpected. And it took care of any of the needs we had at that point in time. And what we've noticed through life, it's been doors open that I never even knew existed, or possibilities that I never thought of. And all I had to do basically was go through those doors and say yes. And it was all a part of this raining down, more than I could have ever expected.
What I think is also amazing is how just the teamwork attitude that you two have portrayed over the years. You know, I mean, obviously you weren't, in every board meeting at Schooler, but how essential your contribution was to what Grandpa was able to grow.
I felt I was an integral part of it.
She builds a family and I build this thing on the outside, and the two meld together.
Mm-hmm.
And the two become one.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've just had a blessed life.